If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The IRS targets the proletariat. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. The terribly misnamed Inflation Reduction Act contained an $80 billion increase in the IRS budget. The IRS says they will hire 87,000 new agents with the money. In defense of those hirings, they claim they will increase government revenue by $204 billion. As I often say in the classroom, on the other hand, you could properly say they hope to remove $204 billion from the productive sector of the economy. See, in economics, we often use the phrase opportunity cost. We want to know where that $204 billion would be if the IRS did not powerfully extract it from the productive part of society. Now, the purpose of taxing is to maintain a civil society in a fallen world. One of my fellow Christian economists, Art Lindsley, says it this way: the government should punish evil but not do good. The church should do good but not punish evil. Now, if the $204 billion is being used to punish evil, Christians would be pleased about that. But it's not. Now, we need to remember, it's the government, not the giverment. Their role is to govern. But instead of governing, the money will be used to perform the federal government's view of good. For more on that, take a listen to my podcast number 69, which is titled, Who Cares? So, if the church's purpose is to do good, how does your church increase revenue? When's the last time your church hired more fundraisers? Just what I thought. Your church operates by free will giving, not by forcibly extracting revenue from its parishioners. Seems like your church is raising money the right way, don't you think? Isn't society better off when we reduce the use of power? In 1 Samuel 8, the Israelites asked Samuel to appoint a king. Apparently, they wanted to be just like the other countries. Samuel warned them that a king would take their sons and make them serve in the army. He continued his warning in verse 16 of that chapter. Quote, your male and female servants and the best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own use. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When the day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. End quote from Samuel. Seems like that's what's happening now when the IRS takes 87,000 of the best workers out of the productive economy. 3 buckets. Okay, let's make this simple. Money can go only 3 places: saving, spending, or taxes. We'll include giving in the spending bucket for simplicity's sake. Saving is the best place for your money because it lowers the interest rate and encourages the development of the economy. It happens to be biblical also. Spending is the second best place because the money gets multiplied throughout the economy. If you buy a new dress, the shop pays rent and labor, and they pay the supplier for the dress. They, in turn, pay their rent, employees, etc., and the money gets multiplied. Taxes is the worst bucket. As mentioned earlier, it gets diverted from the other 2 buckets and put into the protection economy. Now, here's what I mean by that. Police and accountants consume wealth. They don't create it. They consume value that is created by others. Look, we need police and we need accountants. And you can add IRS agents in that mix if you want. We need them because we live in a fallen world. But the less we spend on them, the richer we all become. Keeping money in the value-creating system and out of the value-consuming system is good for the economy. So we need IRS agents, but we want as few as possible. Honor those in power. In our book, Biblical Economic Policy, Sergei Seidamatov and I found 10 biblical commandments of economics. Number 10 is honor those in power. We should follow the law. But if you're looking for a law to break, cheating on your taxes is the best one because it grows the economy. Now, when you're honest and pay all the taxes you're supposed to, you harm the economy. Okay, I'm the Christian economist, so I live in 2 camps. Christians seek input answers, Economists almost always seek output answers. You can call it means and ends if you want to. So as a Christian, we're supposed to keep the law and pay our taxes. An economist would encourage you to cheat on your taxes because that keeps money out of the value-reducing economy and keeps it in the value-creating economy. Okay, I'm not suggesting you break the law. Sometimes you don't have a choice, as in this example. A businessman in Brazil once explained to me that he could choose to keep the law or make a profit, but not both. That's because the Brazilian regulations are so extreme that they prevent profit. Look, a magazine called Global Payroll explains it this way. Brazil has one of the most complex payroll systems because of its constantly changing laws and the impact of labor unions with employment and compensation requirements. Brazil is known for high employee and employer taxes, end quote. That's the nice way of saying it. See, we're not there yet in the United States, but we're getting closer. Labor. Now, another opportunity cost consideration is the labor of the IRS agents. If the IRS didn't hire those 87,000 agents, they would be working in the private economy, growing the economy. Instead, they are in the value-reducing part of the economy. You may not be aware, but government employees can spend their time on the clock working for union interests. IRS and Treasury Department employees spent 353,820 hours engaged in union activism. Their PAC gives every cent of that to the Democrats, by the way, in only 1 year, 2019. The new 87,000 agents will likely double those hours. So not only will we take those 87,000 workers out of the private labor pool, we'll put them in the cesspool, where they will draw government salaries while working for their public sector unions. Okay, the architect of the Great Society himself, FDR, warned that public unions were a bad idea. Here's what he said. All government employees should realize that the process of collective bargaining, as usually understood, cannot be transplanted into the public service, end quote. But the folks who passed this recent bill are not listening to even the great champion of statism. They are surpassing even his goals. Now, I unpack the negative effect of labor unions in podcast number 52, titled Unions Cause Disunion in the Union. The Leviathan gets even larger. Here are just a few snippets of headlines today. T-Mobile lays off workers. Ford confirms layoffs. Snapchat cuts 20% of its staff. We are accustomed to these headlines in the productive part of society. Why don't you ever read a headline stating something like, IRS to lay off workers, the Department of Justice slims down, or the Food and Drug Administration reduces its workforce? Why? Because they're not driven by the market. They are driven by federal dictate. Now, my 20-year-old sophomores at Dallas Baptist University have lived through an amazing increase in information technology in their lifetimes that has reduced the workforce in the productive economy. Why doesn't the government do this? See, planning to hire 87,000 new IRS agents has been determined to be the largest expansion of the police state, the police state, in American history. You thought they'd be toting a pencil, didn't you? Look, the IRS announcement states, quote, the IRS is looking for special agents who can carry a firearm and be willing to use deadly force if necessary, end quote. Okay. The Global Payroll publication I mentioned earlier stated that the Brazilians had high regulation. Well, what about the United States? The tax code is 6,871 pages. But when you include the tax regulations and official tax guidance from IRS, it's about 75,000 pages. Taxpayers seeking help from the Internal Revenue Service can expect to receive erroneous advice more than 20% of the time. It's because the system is so complex. In his book, 3 Felonies a Day, Harvey Silverglate explains that when the laws become so complex, power shifts from the individual to the government. Now, the subtitle of his book is How the Feds Target the Innocent. Okay, his point is, we've all broken some law along the way, So the feds simply decide who to prosecute. The proletariat will pay. Now, the rich have a phalanx of lawyers to defend them against the new IRS agents. Poor and middle-class taxpayers are more likely to do their own taxes and thus more likely to make the mistakes that the new army of IRS agents are looking for. In the bill that hired the 87,000 agents, Republicans tried to add an amendment that would have prevented new agents from auditing individuals and small businesses with less than $400,000 of taxable income. It was refused by the Democrats who passed the bill. Why? Because, as a friend of mine says, it don't pencil out, meaning they have to go after the middle class, because that's where the money is. See, auditing every single taxpayer with an annual income over $1 million would require only 25,000 new IRS enforcement agents. But the funding calls for 87,000 new agents. What will all those extra agents do? Now, like the students in my DBU class who think socialism is going to redistribute goods to them, the middle class is about to find out the IRS agents are not going after the rich. They're going after the middle class or the proletariat. Look, do the math. The guys at the top can defend themselves. The bottom 57% pays no tax. So the only way for the 87,000 new IRS agents to capture the $204 billion increase in revenue they are bragging about is to go after the middle class. They have asked for a king, and they've been granted one. Let's pray we don't suffer the same fate that the Israelites did, because Samuel gave them Saul. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time. For more information, please visit us online at davearnott.com. If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them online or in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.